Hello everybody, welcome to the second episode of this still unnamed interview series that explores the game industry throughout Asia by speaking to small developers and industry members local to the region. Today our guest is Shin Imai, veteran video game journalist and deputy editor at IGN Japan. Thank you for being here, Imai. How are you today?
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Good to hear. So why don't we first start with questions then? As mentioned in the introduction, you are the IGN Japan deputy editor. What is your role and responsibilities as deputy editor?
So there is no special role as deputy editor. So it's just assistant of the chief editor. However, I play the central part of IGN Japan. So I am responsible for IGN Japan's original article. It's a not translated article and planning regular show and some event show. So it's my job. Yeah.
And also understand that IGN Japan is managed under the Sankei Digital Limited, which is a Japanese newspaper. Mm-hmm. Despite that, do you still communicate with other IGN branches?
Yeah, IGN is an international news network. Naturally, we communicate with other editions, US or UK or Australia and other country. So especially, I have a lot of communication, collaboration with IGN US, UK, Australia. It's an English country. So we made some content for them. Yeah.
And, on a side issue, I do want to ask you, do you think it's an issue that people only use Google Translate to try and understand game news from Japan? How important is context?
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question. So it is important to understand content. Japanese gaming market has its own culture and context. And sometimes Western media makes incorrect reports by using Google Translate or some poor translation. So if you can understand article in Japanese, you might misunderstand the context.
What about when for example, when a character in the game Judgment was removed because of the actor was arrested on suspicion of drug use? People thought that this decision from the game company was a bit too strong.
So I understand. But Pierre Taki was completely scrapped from Judgment. So the game made by Sega. So I think Western people didn't understand the situation, but it is related to Japanese talent ecosystem in Japan. So Geinokai. So Geinokai and Japanese people dislike for drugs. So very it's something dangerous.
Yeah, and I heard because of how public actors and these people are, that the image is almost belongs to the company.
Yeah.
For example, like you said, drug use and the bad public image it brings, it's almost the company's decision and not the actor decision to whether they're removed or not. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And considering all that, what factors do you consider when choosing games to review for IGN Japan? I know that even though Life is Strange 2 was released internationally in 2019, IGN Japan did not release a review until 2020.
So the reason is very simple. So we will review games full localized into Japanese. So because our main target is Japanese gamers, so and they focus on localization quality as well as games content. So localization is a very good, but it's a directly impact for the content. So also we may not review big title in Western markets. Some AAA title in Western markets are not popular in Japan. So for example, Blizzard's World of Warcraft or some title is very minor in Japan, and BioWare RPG is a little minor, and some Western RPG like a Divinity is not popular in Japan.
And how about international news? Like, how do you choose what to report to your target audience?
So popularity in Japan is the most important things, and we pick up some indie title sometimes. So which titles appear in Japan? So some Japanese influence JRPG like title, or some catchy visual, or some catchy setting. Anyway, so we focus on Japanese gamer. So Japanese gamers have some taste of gaming.
And, on top of all this, what do you think are IGN Japan's unique points that makes it stand out?
So IGN Japan is a unique media in Japan. So we are an edition of IGN network. It means that we have somehow Western or global point of view. So and we want to enlighten Japanese gamers.
What do you mean by enlighten?
Yeah, gaming markets and culture have a long history in Japan and a long tradition in Japan. But most Japanese gaming media don't make reviews with a score. So it suggests that Japanese game media are conservative and industry friendly. And traditionally, gaming publishers have a lot of power in Japan. But I think we need to get side of gamers, more gamer friendly. So and more honest review and honest opinion for industry.
That's interesting. Wait, so you're saying that not a lot of, well, I mean, most famous is Famitsu, they do review scores, but other than them and IG in Japan, there aren't really that many places that do reviews with scores?
Some Japanese media have review with score, so but the score is not reliable. It's something not main dish. So, but our score is a very very big impact for user or reader. So we write review and so with score is a very severe job, but it is very important, I think.
And how else do you separate yourself from the traditional games media in Japan?
So we make a lot of video contents. Most Japanese gaming media focus on text article, but we want to tell the story or impression by video with passion. So we write the review by text and we talk about gaming or the game review in our movie contents. So it's both sides is also important.
And I've seen some of your shows as well. It's very modern, like you said. Like you do podcasts like Shabere Sugi Game. And going back to the beginning a bit, what was it like to launch IGN Japan, especially building a new games media site? Was IGN already well recognized in Japan?
Mm-hmm. So IGN has a high expectation for IGN Japan because Japan is a very big in the gaming industry and has a long history and so many creators and so many publishers and developers. So and now we have some collaboration with IGN team. So we have a good relation with IGN UK or US or Australia. Yeah.
Even most recently, there was an article on, interview with the recent Nintendo employee who's recently retired. And that was, an effort from your side, I believe, right? IGN Japan, that was then translated for IGN International.
Yeah. We have a very big publisher and creator in Japan. So we cover with them directly. Now, so COVID situation, so other countries' staff can't visit Japan. So we Japanese staff can cover Japanese publisher or the creator. It is very useful. So IGN network is very strong connection.
And even and most recently, like I tend to see more, especially in the comment section, even though, like you said, IGN Japan is targeting the Japanese audience in Japan, occasionally I'll still see that there will be interest from outside Japan.
Yeah, so we will focus on Japanese gamers primarily, but we welcome overseas readers. Some Western gamers who like Japanese games and culture care about the review, our review, and its score, or they also like Japanese game and care about Japanese gamer. So there are various value for the games, but it is happy for us to have overseas readers. Yeah. So and some overseas readers translate our article into their language. So it is not official contents, but I think it is okay to enjoy it.
But what about situations for, like, let's say, for example, IGN Japan's The Last of Us Part 2 review? Because I remember seeing it brought up a lot of negative comments in English. What's your opinion on that?
So we have many comments overseas gamers, but our review of Last of Us Part 2 became a hot topic because our score is relatively low. I think the review is fair and very consistent. However, it is not the opinion of the whole team. So actually, some members in our teams love this game. Our review is opinion of the reviewer. So we trust the reviewers, and even if it is a personal opinion with fairness and the consistency. So it is a useful review, I believe. And our game of the year last year, Last of Part 2 is a very high position. So our member like this game, but some member dislike this game. So it's a very mixed type.
But you're able to be honest about it, like you say, even though if the reviewer does not score highly compared to the other medias, you're still able to have that discussion, especially around Game of the Year time. And have you ever thought about having an English section, especially with the international interest in Japanese games and pop culture?
So we welcome overseas readers and want to communicate with global gamers more and more. So, but the primary target is Japanese, and we can't publish the English article because of our license. So our edition is for Japanese, not for English. But we wanna communicate with global gamers, so sometimes the staff Twitter account communicate with overseas readers.
Yeah, well, the article I mentioned earlier was an interview with a retiring Nintendo employee. And because that even appeared on IGN International or IGN US, right? And why don't we speak more about you? I know you've been in video game journalism for a long time, but how did you get your start in games journalism?
Okay. So I studied aesthetics in University Tokyo. So my main theme is popular music studies and cultural industries. So music industries have a long history as cultural industry. So the study of music industry is very useful for understanding gaming industries. So cultural industry are very interesting things because they make a product and arts at the same times. So they make some record of music, and same times they make something art. The product and art are not incompatible, but have some conflicts. So they make products for the money, but also make the value of art. So artists have to make the money and have to make the value. So both is important. So it is very interesting. So aesthetics and popular music studies are totally useful for my job now. So also, I worked as a freelance gaming journalist. I wrote review and took many interviews. And so it is about 2010. The iPhone was popular and people made their own games in the App Store. And the indie game scene was rising in Japan. So Beat Summit started in 2030. So I've been deeply involved in Japanese indie game scene since.
If I may ask, just to, do you have any memorable early moments?
Yeah. So it's a very, very big interview is Cave Stories developers Amaya-san. Amaya-san is a very famous developer in Japan. He made the Cave Story and he very famous in global. So Amaya-san is a very shy guy. So there are little interview in the web, but my interview is maybe most big one. Yeah.
I've also heard about something called Hotline Tokyo. What's that about?
Hotline Tokyo is something group or club I made. So which play and talk about indie games. I think the gamers connection is very important for indie games because indie games are relatively niche title, so you have a hard time finding a fan of minor games. So if you are Kojima's game fan, it is very easy to find them, but not so much for indie games. So if you are indie game fan, so you have to find the other fans member. It is a very, very small circle, but you can communicate in internet and SNS in now. So the fan community is very important for indie game scene, I think.
Actually, can I ask, when did Hotline Tokyo start then? When was it? Like 2010, 2011? Do you remember?
Maybe so maybe 2010 or 2012.
12?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very very casual meeting. So it's a very very slowly and very casual type meeting and group.
Yeah. Like you said, it was hard to find other fans of indie games. I imagine especially in Japan. So it must have been really a very useful project. If you don't mind, we could go back talk a little bit about your academic background, because you mentioned that you did music and aesthetics for your university studies. And I find that your research background really does stand out whenever you speak or do a review or talk about a game. I remember, I think it was Shaberu Sugi Gamer episode 206. You were talking about Ghost of Tsushima, but you talked a lot about samurai history. How has your research abilities, especially your knowledge into like Japan history, influenced your enjoyment of the game?
So I am not expert of history and Japanese history, but I am very interested in history in Japan. So and I like Japanese mythology and fantasy things. So actual military history. So that's things very very familiar with video games. Yeah. So they will be a resource of gaming setting, I think. So I enjoy Ghost of Tsushima, but I found some historical things are not correct. The samurai in the Kamakura era isn't was in the Edo era. So Western people have the image of samurai based on movie or manga. Some Kurosawa's movie or some vagabond or manga style. It's a typical Edo period samurai, but Kamakura period samurai is not just like that. So Ghost of Tsushima is almost fantasy things, but I like it. Yeah.
You know, because now that you are in a deputy editor role, like management role, and you still have so much curiosity, especially researching, like earlier, you even demonstrate, even talking about the Kamakura era and the Edo era, how the samurais in their respective times differ. Do you miss writing at all?
Yeah, so now I'm a deputy chief editor, so I hardly write my own article. So my main job is management now. So, but sometimes I write review and interview article. It's a very special interview. So my favorite game or my favorite creators. So they are based on my strong personal passion. So some my favorite indie creator and my favorite indie game, and some very interesting industrial thing and culture things.
But like, you have your own personal blog, right? It's completely in Japanese, so I don't have a chance to read it. I had to read it very slowly, but I always loved the caption or the motto of the blog, which was music and game and fucking art. Very punk.
Yeah. So I like punk. So I like music. So I write about music in my blog. So it is almost music entry and some type of creative things. I think what is a creativity. So how creative you be. So I write down my idea on my blog. So and I love music as much as games. So, but it is not suitable for IGN Japan. So I like punk rock and some electronic music and some video game music. So there are so minor things I can't write their things for IGN Japan. So it's my personal blog. So I wanna write my favorite music, my favorite some creator, so some illustrator or some animator and a movie.
So it's literally just for your personal interest.
Yeah.
You know, it's always interesting because I can't remember when since I started following you on Twitter, but you always seem to be finding new indie games, you know, especially ones that can be quite unknown. Like, for example, I think the first time I heard about the game Butterfly Soup, that was from you. But what draws you to these very unknown indie games, and how do you find them?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I like indie games because they are very personal and experimental and very unique. So every day I check a lot of press mail. So press mails a lot of press mail. So most of them are about indie games and check the Steam or some platform. So I put the so my wish list and I check and I click the creator's name or developer's site. I check their portfolio. So if I find something great art or something great music or something great trailer, I check it and so I follow their game. Yeah. So I checked independent creators, artists and composer on in SNS account. So ultimately, I like creative things, not only video game. So all about creative things, music and art and visual things and design. So big AAA titles are great works, but they are not transparent. So big AAA games of such like Ghost of Tsushima or GTA 5. It's a very, very, very gorgeous game, but I can't find who is responsible for this art and this creative. So I can't find it. So, but indie game, so I can find who is creative. So it's very easy because indie game is a very, very small team. So you can easily he is a very creative artist or creative composer. So you can very easily find that. Yeah, I mean I found the contributes stats of this work. So on other hand, indie games are very, very, very transparent. So it is very interesting for me.
And it's amazing sometimes because again, you will sometimes find these games that I've never heard about, or even though I follow all the US, UK game news, like you always seem to find games that even seems like they haven't heard before, and it's always interesting. I feel like I can always trust you to find something interesting. And speaking of IGN Japan Indie Game Week, how were you involved, and where did the idea come from?
So it's our own event. So I am a founder of the Indie Game Weeks. So last year there were so many online events. E3 and TGS also some events. So I felt many indie developers were in trouble for appearing their games to audience. So I think trailer showcase or limited time public demo are not helpful for them. So because they are hidden by big title, it is somehow discovery problem in this situation. So I think deep dive preview articles are more useful because indie games fans want the impression of the indie games. How fans this game, how you feel when you play games. So it's very important. But they have no time to play so many public demos. So some Steam Indie Festival, so many playable demo is published by in Steam, but you can play the old title. So I think media's deep dive review is helpful for users. So we play the games and introduce them to our audience. So this is a very good game. It is worth for play. So our role is curate the demo for our audience.
Yeah, and how was the reaction to it? Like, how did people enjoy it?
Yeah, the reaction was basically good. Our audience were very looking forward to our preview, and they read our preview and very, very enjoy it. And it was a good opportunity for indie developers for announce and introduce their title for Japanese audience. Yeah, very, very good opportunity, I think.
That's good to hear. And speaking slightly outside of game journalism, a few years ago you presented at the Valencia Indie Summit in Spain specifically. Just to give people an idea, the presentation is on YouTube and it's called The Differences and Similarities Between Japanese Indie Game Scene and Other East Asian Countries. If you were given a similar opportunities again to present outside of Japan, would you like to do it?
So So my English to speech is poor. So it is a very shame, but I want to speak about Japanese indie game for overseas industry guy. So I visit so many places for this indie event. It is super fun and I enjoy it. So and I felt about Japanese indie game scene. I think it is a good opportunity to connect global indie communities. So I wanna continue to these activities. But now situation is not
Yeah.
suitable for that. Yeah.
It's very tricky nowadays. It's something I also really enjoy whenever I was able to go abroad and go to other like conventions and meet other indies from other areas. The first time I went to was Bit Summit 2015 or 16, and that's when IGN Japan started around that time. And I'm very curious about what you think is the current state of Japanese game journalism. How has it changed compared to when you first started? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
So basically, I am a positive for Japanese game industry. I think Japanese are relatively conservative, but some publisher creator become more open-minded. And we can use the internet or some platform for sending our opinions. And people talk about gaming more and more. The media talk about gaming more honestly.
Thank you very much. And then for those who would like to follow more of what you write and what you work, they can obviously look for your work at IGN Japan, listen to podcasts like Shaberisugi Gamer, or look at your own personal blog. And if they want to follow more about you personally, they can follow you on Twitter, right? So it's at Shin Imai, is that correct?
Yeah.
I will give a link to that. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.